So one of the reasons that I chose to want to talk about this subject today is because there were a lot of companies that went under during COVID-19, but there was an industry that actually flourished financially during COVID-19. And a lot of different things happened. I mean, we lost a lot of folks, and then the funeral industry wasn't able to keep up with the amount of deaths as a result. So today I bring on Sakima Mitchell. She's a social service worker who's going to share her experience with us. And we have Teresa Coleman, who's a first responder from one of our major hospitals. And she's going to talk us through what happened during COVID-19, even though, let me not say it as though it's over, because it's not over. But that first round, let's just say the first round, because this is like the second round. So here we go.
Welcome.
Teresa and Sakima, welcome to the weekly webinar.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for taking the time out. I know you're really busy. So let's start with Teresa if we can. Teresa, tell me, what is it that you do in the hospital? What is your role?
I am a manager of the emergency department.
Okay, so you saw a lot in that first round of COVID when it first hit, and so you saw a lot. You've experienced a lot. What happened when it came to so many deaths that wasn't, of course, no one can ever be prepared for that, but I'm sure the hospital was not prepared for what came down the pike. What happened in the emergency room?
Well, the people passed away rapidly, so the morgue only can hold a certain amount of patients at a time, because usually when patients pass away, they don't all pass away at one time. You don't have hundreds passing away at one time. You have one in the morning, one in the evening, tops 4. So the morgue, I think, can hold 10. And usually with 10, it's okay, because if you pass away on Monday, the funeral director's coming to get you on Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay.
So, but when COVID hit, the patients passed away a little bit faster. So we had to get like refrigerated trucks so that we could keep them, so that the funeral homes can have them without, rigor mortis setting in. So you have to have them still at a nice temperature. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do know that. I mean, because there was a lot of. So what did those trucks look like? So kind of describe what those trucks look like.
They were, well, they were white, and they were refrigerator trucks. You couldn't have them with names and stuff on them, because we had to park them on the property, but like on the side of the morgue, so you couldn't have like a refrigerator truck. It was just white. Okay. And it was and it plugged into the generator so that it can stay cold, because the bodies wasn't going anywhere, because you couldn't move them at that time.
Right. How many bodies would you say were in those trucks at any given time?
Well, the building only holds 10. And you had patients passing away. Like, I would get 20 a day. Some days I would get 30. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, you get 10, then you remember they're not moving. So the first 10 would stay in the building, and then you put the rest outside in the refrigerator truck.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason why they probably weren't moving is because the funeral homes were overtaxed as well. It's like all the funeral homes. I mean, I've even heard stories of them having them on the floor in the like sitting, like having all the bodies on the floor, because there was no space for it. They had so many at some point.
And funeral homes is a business, and so if your loved one died, you automatically call the funeral. And even though you couldn't move, they would accept your call. So they like, oh, okay, but they couldn't come and pick up the bodies, because at the funeral home you only can hold 6 for a regular size funeral home.
Oh wow!
If you have a funeral home that has different rooms in it, you have some funeral homes that have like 6 different chapels, then they could probably hold 12 bodies, because they'll do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. But if you get a smaller one, they don't have the capacity. So therefore, they need a refrigerator truck, or they put you on the floor.
Oh my God. Yeah. See, Michael, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because I know people didn't know this, and we're not talking about this. And so because we're not talking about it, there's a lot of things that happen that we really just don't know, and people don't know their rights. And there's a lot of rights when it comes to funeral services as well, because
Yeah.
as Teresa mentioned, it's a business.
Mm.
So we're going to switch over to Sakima for a second, because Sakima recently utilized the services of a funeral home. And so I just want her to walk us through this process. I'm also going to put in the chat, uh, um, like from the government that tells you to know your rights when it comes to funeral homes. And then I'm going to tell you some things that you did not know. I'm sure you didn't know. Sakima, let's unmute you so we can get you in this conversation. Right.
Yes.
All right. So Sakima, I don't know why I feel like I'm getting feedback. Can you hear that? Or is it just me? Okay.
I can hear you
Good?
fine.
Okay. All right. So Sakima, let's talk, if you will, about your experience. And this is a recent experience. How recent was this experience?
Well, my dad passed away the end of September 22nd. So it's
Sorry
very
to hear,
recent.
Sakima.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, my dad passed away. He lived upstate. So it was very difficult for me to plan, for him in Brooklyn, where he's from and where he wanted to come back, what his wishes were. And yeah, it was an experience with.
Okay. So now you did something different, because your dad had asked you that he wanted to be cremated, but you wanted to do something a little different, right?
Right.
You wanted to do a service, and you wanted to honor his wishes. So tell me a little bit about what that looked like when you went to the funeral home and you tried to make that happen.
Well, like you said, my dad's wishes was to be cremated, but I wanted to bring his body, back to Brooklyn, so that family and friends can say, farewell to him, and get to see him, before the cremation. And I reached out to a few funeral homes. It was a bit pricey, but I found one funeral home who was able to transport his body from upstate to Brooklyn and provide all the services that I need at a cost. But
how much was that cost? How much did that cost you?
Well, he packaged it very nice, right? He's like, oh, for $4,500, we can transport your dad from upstate, to Brooklyn. We'll take care of the cremation. We'll deliver his remains. You'll get his death certificate. We'll be able to provide a funeral home. It included the service, and them transporting his body. It wasn't until after we sat down to go over the contract that I found all the additional costs.
So let's talk about some of those additional costs.
Okay. So some of the additional costs were like programs. For example, at every, most people, when they have funeral service, they have programs where they kind of, write an obituary and your program for your service. Some people have the cards and you have flowers. I didn't know even paying for like an officiant was additional as well. Everything is kind of additional. So when he gave me the whole, for $4,500, I'll take care of everything, I actually didn't take care of everything. There were additional costs, that kind of.
So let's talk about when the upsell. So let's talk about what happened. How much was he trying to charge you for? Let's say, I don't know, brochures.
Okay, so the brochures, for example, most are like for maybe like 6 pages or 4 pages. He wanted to charge me $350 for 2 pages. No, $650 for 2 pages, and he was going to give me a discount and give me 50% off the additional 2 pages for 100 programs.
Exactly. And then what did you decide to do?
In the beginning, because you're still grieving, you're still mourning, you just want to just get it over it. You just add it all up. Even when it came to the flowers, like, oh, I can give you, 3 flowers, for $1,500, or, you just want to just say, just add it to the bill. I'll just take care of it, because you don't want to deal with it. Right. But at some point I had to just sit down and say, all right, Sakima, like, you got to get this done for your dad. Exactly. And at the same time, this is still a business. You don't want to be taken advantage of. So I did, little birdie whispered in my ear and said, you could do this yourself, and I created the programs myself for my dad, and they were about $150 for me to do them myself, or flowers. My brother took care of flowers, and it was maybe like 50% of like what he wanted to charge.
Wow.
So it's like, you kind of want to just take time. I know, you're grieving, you know, the person may be, you know, very dear to you, but it is still a business, right? And unfortunately, I didn't have, you know, our loved ones, they kind of want to set us up where, you know, you don't have to pay for the funeral, but I didn't have that option, you know, and I just wanted to just give my father a respectful funeral service. But I also know that my dad wouldn't want me to be taken advantage of. So you just have to just sit down, you know, and just kind of keep yourself together, you know, and try and find ways that you can, you know, give your loved one, you know, their last, you know, respect, you know, while they're on this, kind of send them away in a respectful manner. But you don't want to just go broke, you know, doing that, because they'll sell you everything, you know. I can get you a white horse, and, you know, we can ride him through the streets of Brooklyn for $12,000. And although you want to do that, like, come on, it's a little bit ridiculous, you know.
Yeah. I think one of the things is that people have to understand that when it comes to making funeral arrangements, one, I think they take advantage of you being grief-stricken, right? So they got you at a point where you're like vulnerable, you're crying, you're sad.
Right.
You just said you want to give everything you have to your loved ones, right? You want to say, oh,
Right.
I'll spare no cost. Like, yeah, you know. But
Right.
but then the reality should hit, right? And then you say, you know what? You got to take off your grief hat for a moment. And if it's not you, then it's got to be someone else in your family to do that. Take off your grief hat and then put on your business hat, because you better believe they doing business with you.
Right.
Now, when it came to those little cards, that, I guess, how much were they trying to charge for the little cards?
Oh, it was ridiculous. It was maybe about, I'll say about let's say 400, and my brother and his wife got it done for like maybe 100, if that, you know. So I mean, and to be honest with you, even creating like the cards for, like, when my brother and his wife created the cards and I created the obituary for my dad in the program, it gave me a sense of relief a little bit too. It was almost like, you know, I was writing that, it was kind of very personal, you know, because it was my dad. I just felt like a funeral home wouldn't be able to express, you know, what he meant to everyone, like in a standard form. You know, not only are you going to charge me a crazy amount of money to do something that only costs a fraction to produce, but you're not even going to do it with love. You know, so
that's important. I think one of the other things is that in this particular industry, you have to have a certain amount of love for people, right? To be able to get them at their most vulnerable part, at their, you know, their grief stricken, and be able to comfort them. But I think that too, to Teresa's point, is that everything was moving so rapidly, and it was so many people. You got bodies on the floor. So how could you really give the type of care that you would want to give to folks, or normally give to folks, right? When you're faced with situations like that. So I'm sure that wasn't an easy thing for them, and they had to try to find some balance. Not that I'm defending it, but to maybe find some balance. The fact that they made a lot of money out of it.
yes.
Now, I invited on, I'm not sure if she's on here, Susan Hempfield. She's actually from one of the funeral homes in Maryland. I'm not sure if she made it on or not. But she is one of those people who really are very, very compassionate and very caring about what she does. She has done services for me in the past, and I will say that there she is. There she is. So we're going to unmute Susan. Can we get her here? She's been in this industry for a long time. Hey, Susan, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Thank you for making it on to the show. So I'm glad that you finally made it. You see, now you see I was talking about you. I didn't even know if you was in the room. So you see that?
I was here. Yep.
Yeah, and my hometown is Baltimore. Myself and Teresa. So our hometown is Baltimore, and Susan has provided services from King Memorial, and they deal with the cemetery themselves, but they've just done such a wonderful job. And I wanted to just talk to Susan briefly. Susan, how long have you been in the industry?
8 years.
You've been in there 8 years, and how do you? And I know during COVID it had to be very difficult. What was the most challenging part of that for you?
I would say not, you know how I'm like really hands-on, and So when you meet the family, you have to be so much different now. Like, you can't really, a family needs a hug. I've buried a mother and a son, and so
Wow.
at the same time, so the dynamics are so different now, where the touch that you would give to a family that's going through, that's missing. So
Yeah.
it seems more impersonal when you don't really want to, but you're also trying to protect yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
so it is a little different.
Yeah. How did you guys handle the rapid death, the rate of death during COVID-19? How did you guys handle that?
Well, thank God, you guys felt more of a brunt of it in New York than we did here.
Okay.
Um, at first, I think on the funeral side, they which is different from my side,
Right.
so I can understand what the sister is saying about how the funeral works. And I tell people how to pre-plan, do a lot of things that you can ahead of time, because it costs you more when you wait for something to happen. It costs
Mm-hmm.
more. So if you pre-plan it, you're going to be making decisions on your own time with normal conditions, and you're not stressed.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
so that's the best thing to do. For us, we at the cemetery, even though we have seen an uptick in due to the coronavirus, we've seen a lot of people who said, you know what, this is so shocking to me, I want to pre-plan. So for me, that's the biggest thing. More people see how uncertain life is, and how
Wow.
this thing
Okay.
just came and changed all of our lives, and we've lost people. They've lost everyone. I'm sure by now knows someone that they've
Yep.
lost.
Mm-hmm.
My husband lost his father to
Wow.
coronavirus, so we all know someone. So I think it made people more aware of what they need to do while you can,
Yeah.
because remember,
Yeah.
for African Americans, pre-planning or talking about this part, which is so important, we don't like talking about it. It's
Nope,
very
I didn't
taboo.
expect a lot of people today. I didn't expect. I
Yeah,
told Michael, I said I don't expect a lot of folks on, because this is a conversation. You have to really be courageous to be in the room for this conversation. We don't do that
right.
as African Americans. We don't do that.
Nope. Nope. And talking about it on the normal circumstances at your kitchen table, planning for a part of life. This is, I mean, death is a part of life, so
There
it's
you
not
go.
something we like talking about anywhere. But when you pre-plan, when you could go to the funeral home or to the cemetery and you know exactly what you want, and you're not at his mercy where you need it. It's not something you can do for yourself, so you're going to pay whatever it is most time that he tells you, when you could have done it earlier and just shop around, and you tell them exactly what you want,
There
because
you
you have
go.
time. You're not rushed.
Right. Exactly.
And then you hold
Exactly.
in the cost. The
Mhm.
biggest thing in cemetery and funeral is holding the cost that it is the price today, not that it will be when you need it way down the road.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
we all should pre-plan.
Yeah. See, there you go. Now, there you go. That's one thing one tip we need that Susan just gave us is pre-planning.
Pre-plan.
Now, I want you also to know that there was a time where the funeral services included the cemetery, but it became a law for it to be a separate entity.
Right.
That was because it was being monopolized. So you heard when Susan was saying she understand the other part that Sakim is talking about, but that's the funeral services part on that end. Susan's part is the cemetery and the burial. That's the other end. They made them separate entities so that you could not monopolize it and then take control of the entire thing. Am I correct in saying that, Susan?
But also too, because if you went to the funeral home and you paid him and you think he chose this for you, and then on the day of the service he took the money and maybe that's not what you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's to keep fraud out of it and say, look, you go to the cemetery for yourself and choose for yourself what you want. So then you
Exactly.
can't say, back in the day when we said the Undertaker, Undertaker took the money and I didn't, that's not what I would have chosen for my loved one. This takes that off the table. You choose for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's
And then he can't
important.
upcharge you for anything. You looking at the cost yourself. You asking your own question. you're deciding for yourself. If he tells you the burial ground is $4,000, it really costs $3,000, you know, he's cheated you out
Exactly.
of $1,000.
Exactly. And that's more things that people need to know, that you should be asking for a price list. There's a
Sure.
price list. So, Sakima, when you did your funeral services, did you go over a price list? Did he itemize everything for you?
He did, but what I found was after the fact was that he did provide a price list, right? But for example, he broke down that there were different crematories that my dad can go to. He's like, oh, you know, if we go to the one in, let's say, Brooklyn, it'll be an additional $300 or $400, and they'll have a little mini service. But if we take him to Staten Island, then, you know, it's included, but only for me to find out, you know, after that he took my dad to New Jersey, where it was completely free.
See?
So, I mean, I found all of those things out kind of after the fact, but he did provide a pre-printed price list. He did, you know, he provided that, but I think just at the time I just...
Mm-hmm. What happened when at the start of the service? Did the service start on time? Did he provide all the services as okay?
No.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if this was due to the pandemic, but even like the service, my dad's service was supposed to start at 12, and we got there at 12, and you know, my brother got there at 12. My dad was not prepared. Like, the service didn't start for an hour later. I'm not really sure what the reason was. I mentally couldn't deal with it, so my brother kind of dealt with it, you know, but he started late.
Yeah,
a whole hour late.
That's a big problem in the services. So that's another thing, is that the services that you should have your price list and go through it before you sign it, right? Before you pay them anything, go over it item by item and check it out. I'm gonna say to Susan is that every service that Susan that you've done for my family has been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, from the white doves to every time I go there to just visit them when I'm in town, just the way you greet me. And I've always felt that you cared. It was more than just me paying money, right? I've always felt that you cared. And I'm so glad that you made it onto the webinar, because as much as we're going to talk about some things that, you know, it's kind of negative and that people should keep an eye on, I do want to commend you for the outstanding service that you've always given me throughout the years. And I thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. You've always done an outstanding job. So thank you.
But I do want to say to that young lady, when you think of it in the future, I would think that do your research. All funeral homes are not the same. So there are funeral homes who do wonderful work, who are caring, who are on time. This is their business. They're professional. They're going to be there when they said they're going to be there, because they want you to give them a good reference. A lot of it is, my family went there. That's what my mother used, and I'm going to use it. So you get a lot of repeat business.
Right.
So they're going to do it. So if you just pick someone and maybe didn't do the research, and, you know, money sometimes can be an issue as to what we choose, because you're going to call around and get a price, and everybody's price is going to be different.
Right.
But you want to do your research, because you might get someone who is really not professional.
Yeah.
You
And
know
that's
what
where the pre-planning comes in too.
Yeah.
And I found too, it's like I don't know if it was because I was in New York City, but a lot of like funeral homes, even maybe before you can call directly and you can get a funeral a director, it was a lot of, we'll call you back, we can't do upstate, you know. I got a lot of those. And then, you know, just this was kind of just, you know, we didn't plan for, you know, his death, or he always told me what his wishes were, even though that's not what I wanted to do. But, you know, I wanted to respect his wishes, but it kind of was very difficult planning from a major city to a smaller town, and then trying to get someone to transport the body from upstate during a pandemic. It just was like, it was just crazy. I think I was still waiting for some funeral homes to even call me back, and that could just be maybe because they were busy, or maybe, you know,
there are people still dying from COVID. There's still people passing away.
but we were limited on even like some of the funeral homes that can even assist us. Like my sister was calling, my brother was calling, like we were calling around, and some just couldn't do the transport, even within the
Right.
state, you know, they just couldn't do the transport. I don't know if it was because of time, you know, because I'm assuming that's a normal thing. You know, people die from other states and they want to be buried in, they may, you know, have been born in Brooklyn and they wanted to be buried in Baltimore because that's where their
Right.
family spots, you know. So that's possibly a normal thing, but I don't know if the pandemic kind of played a huge factor.
Sure.
Like some of the funeral homes not even calling me back. And at that point, I was just like, listen, like, I don't care what the amount is. Like, I just want my dad in Brooklyn the way he wanted, and I just want to respect his wishes, and I don't want my dad to sit, and I don't want, you know, like, I just want,
Right.
let's just do this peacefully and respectfully and just get it done. I got to the point where I
Yeah.
just wanted to get it done.
Yeah.
You
And I
know?
think what happens is because of, I'm sure they'll agree that, and because of COVID-19, it was such an influx, and they did not lack for business. They're
Right.
still not lacking for business. So where a lot of small businesses went under, the small funeral homes did not go under.
Mm-hmm.
They actually flourished. They did not go under. This kind of saved them, you know. And so it could be too that, listen, they've made a lot of money. See, when
Right.
before you would have called them, they would have jumped at the chance of servicing you, but now they've made a lot of money, and so things change, right?
Mhm.
So now they're like, hey, you know, I'll get there. Yeah, I think I could do it, or no, that's too far for me. Where if this would have been pre-pandemic, they would have
It
jumped
wouldn't
at
have been
the
an issue.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. So I just wanted to share one last thing with everyone, that in 1960, the average cost of a funeral was $706. Only 3.56% of the bodies were cremated. Now today, the average funeral costs between 8 and 10,000, and 42% are cremated.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. Now
Mhm.
that may not even include the cemetery services. The cemetery.
Wow.
That could be just the funeral services itself. So I'm going to give you a few things that we've mentioned already. We mentioned that you can pre-plan, as Susan told us, right? We should pre-plan. We know it's difficult. It's a difficult topic. Nobody wants to sit around a coffee table talking about this stuff, but we have to talk about it. We as a people have to talk about it, right? We also know, and you, or you may not know, that you can actually, if you're going to do a funeral service, you can purchase your casket online. There are people who don't know that you know. Did you know that Walmart sells caskets? Did anybody? I'm sure not too many people knew that Walmart sold
You know,
caskets.
I'm
And
not surprised.
Amazon sell caskets.
I'm not Walmart. I'm not surprised Walmart sell. They sell everything.
Yeah.